My name is Ethan Miller, and I am 35 years old. I live in a city that prizes innovation, a place built on ambition and the relentless pursuit of the next big thing. My apartment is minimalist, bordering on sparse, clean lines, muted colors, functional furniture. It's a space I carved out for myself after years of feeling like I was living in borrowed rooms, under borrowed expectations. Some might call it stark. I call it uncluttered. It reflects a certain clarity I've fought hard to achieve, both externally and internally. Most days, I run a tech company, Innovate Solutions, a name we adopted after the early, lean years, shedding the skin of its more obscure origins. It's successful now, more successful than I ever dared to dream back when it was just lines of code on a flickering screen in a cramped back room. But success, I've learned, doesn't always erase the ghosts of the past. Sometimes it just illuminates them more sharply. My story, the one that truly reshaped my understanding of family and future, began not with a bang, but with the arrival of a dusty, forgotten shoebox. It came via courier one Tuesday afternoon, forwarded by Mark, a childhood friend I hadn't seen in years. He was clearing out his late parents' attic and had found a box labeled with my name, filled with the detritus of adolescence. Old photos, forgotten mixtapes, letters. He'd included a brief, almost apologetic note. Ethan, found this going through Mom's stuff. Figured you might want it. Crazy finding things from way back when. Hope you're doing well. Mark. I almost tossed the box aside, another relic of a past I preferred not to dwell on. But something made me open it. Inside, beneath faded photos of awkward teenage smiles and questionable fashion choices, was a thick, cream-colored envelope. It looked oddly pristine compared to the surrounding clutter. The logo in the top corner made my breath catch. Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT. My hands trembled slightly as I carefully opened the flap. Inside was a letter, dated over 17 years ago. It was an official acceptance letter to their undergraduate program in computer science and engineering. Tucked behind it was another document, even more stunning, a notification of a full 4-year merit scholarship covering tuition, room, and board. The Kendrick Scholarship for Exceptional Promise in Technology. The air left my lungs in a rush. I sank onto my sofa, the heavy paper cool against my suddenly clammy palms. MIT, a full ride. The dream I'd harbored throughout high school, the goal I'd poured countless hours into achieving. Late nights studying, weekends dedicated to coding competitions, sacrificing teenage normalcy for a shot at the best. I remembered the crushing disappointment when the rejection letter supposedly arrived. Thin, impersonal, final. Or so I'd been told. My parents had delivered the news back then with performative sympathy. "Oh, Ethan, honey, we're so sorry," my mother had said, her hand resting briefly on my shoulder, her eyes already looking past me. "Funding cuts, you know. These prestigious places, they have to make tough choices." My father had been more pragmatic, almost relieved. "It's probably for the best, son. That place is a pressure cooker. And besides, the community college here is perfectly fine. You can stay close to home, help out. Your brother Luke needs you nearby. You know how he struggles sometimes." Luke. My younger brother by 2 years. Always the charmer, the easygoing one, the one who coasted through life on personality while I wrestled with complex problems. He was the one they poured their attention into, the one whose minor achievements were celebrated, whose setbacks were cushioned. I was the intense one, the difficult one, the one whose ambitions seemed to make them vaguely uncomfortable. Stay close, help out, be responsible. That had been the mantra. Now, staring at this pristine acceptance letter, this life-altering scholarship they claimed never existed, The carefully constructed narrative of my past shattered. Funding cuts. A lie. They had hidden this, deliberately. They had received this package, opened it, seen my dream realized, and then consciously buried it, feeding me a story of rejection instead. But why? The question hammered at me, cold and insistent. Why sabotage their own son's future? The memory of my father's words echoed. Stay close. Help out. Luke needs you. It wasn't just about me flying too far from the nest. It was about control. It was about keeping me tethered, predictable, perhaps ensuring the difficult, ambitious older son didn't eclipse the favored, easier younger one. They hadn't wanted me to soar. They had wanted me grounded, available, playing a supporting role in Luke's life, in their lives. A profound, nauseating coldness spread through me, starting in my chest and reaching out to my fingertips. It wasn't just disappointment. It was the realization of a betrayal so deep, so fundamental, it recontextualized my entire adult life. The years of feeling subtly inadequate, the quiet frustration of watching peers from high school leap ahead while I juggled night classes at a state university with demanding, low-paying jobs to cover tuition. The constant, low-grade guilt trip about not being around enough to help Luke with his latest failed business idea, or my parents with mundane household tasks. All of it, stemming from this single calculated act of sabotage concealed in a dusty shoebox. I didn't shout. I didn't throw anything. The shock was too deep, too paralyzing for outward rage. Instead, a strange, icy calm settled over me. The kind of calm that precedes a seismic shift. I carefully placed the letter back in its envelope, slid it into the shoebox, and closed the lid. I sat there for a long time, watching the city lights flicker on outside my window, the hum of the metropolis a distant counterpoint to the silent scream trapped inside my chest. They had stolen my trajectory, altered the course of my life based on their fears and favoritism. And they had done it with sympathetic smiles and comforting lies. That night, sleep was impossible. The image of the MIT letter burned behind my eyelids. The feeling of cold fury warred with a lifetime of ingrained filial duty. But something had irrevocably broken. The foundation of trust, already cracked by years of subtle dismissals and unmet expectations, had crumbled into dust. Fueled by that cold resolve, I walked over to my laptop later that day. I opened my online banking portal. For years, ever since Innovate Solutions had finally started turning a real profit, a success my family consistently downplayed, still referring to my work as tinkering with computers, I had been sending money home. Not a huge amount by my current standards, but significant. Roughly $800 a month, automatically transferred on the first. It covered their utilities, their high-speed internet package, ironic, given their disinterest in my tech career, sometimes extras like a contribution to Luke's endless string of promising startup ventures that never quite launched, or helping with unexpected home repairs. They never asked if I could afford it, especially in the early lean years. They simply expected it. Luke needed help. They were getting older. It was my responsibility as the successful, albeit vaguely defined, older son. The payments were never acknowledged, never met with gratitude, only noted when, on a rare occasion, a technical glitch delayed the transfer by a day. I scrolled through the transaction history, years of silent contributions. $800, $800, $950. That month Luke needed seed money. $800. It wasn't the total amount that stung. It was the crushing weight of expectation coupled with the utter lack of recognition. It was just another way they kept me tethered, fulfilling a role they'd assigned me without my consent. My fingers hovered over the screen. Then, with a quiet decisiveness that felt both liberating and terrifying, I began clicking. Electricity provider, recurring payment, cancel. Water company, recurring payment, cancel. Internet cable provider, recurring payment, cancel. Contribution to Luke's fund, recurring payment, cancel. Each click was soft, almost anticlimactic, yet it felt like severing thick, invisible cords that had bound me for far too long. There was no fanfare, no dramatic announcement, just the quiet efficiency of digital disconnection, mirroring the emotional chasm that had just opened wide before me. I closed the laptop. The apartment felt strangely lighter. Weeks passed in a blur of focused work and internal processing. I poured myself into Innovate Solutions, finding solace in the logic of code and the clear metrics of business growth. The company was thriving, expanding, a testament to the very drive my parents had tried to stifle. We had quietly rebranded from Miller Tech Innovations, a name I chose in youthful naivete, hoping for their approval, to Innovate Solutions several years ago during a major restructuring and funding round. The change, coupled with their inherent disinterest in the specifics of my computer hobby, meant they likely had no real idea of the company's scale or my actual role as CEO. To them, I was still just Ethan, the reliable, slightly odd son who worked with computers and could be counted on to pay the bills. I didn't correct them. Explaining felt exhausting, pointless. I didn't contact my family. I didn't reply to Luke's occasional texts asking about generic things. I needed distance, space to absorb the magnitude of their betrayal. The anger hadn't dissipated, but it had settled into something colder, more observational. Then came my mother's birthday, about 6 weeks after I found the letter. My phone remained silent throughout the morning, a conscious choice. Around lunchtime, the inevitable barrage began. First, Luke. Dude, seriously? Power's out at Mom and Dad's. Mom's freaking out. Guests are coming. Did you forget to pay the electric bill again? The assumption, the casual accusation, was almost laughable. Then my father, terse and demanding. Ethan. No water, no internet. This is unacceptable on your mother's birthday. Handle this now. Not a question, a command. No concern, just entitlement. Finally, my mother, her usual slightly martyred tone. Ethan, honey, I don't know what's happened, but none of the utilities are working. Could you please check the payments? It's my birthday, and things are getting stressful. I read the messages, one after another, feeling a profound sense of detachment. It was like watching a play unfold, one where I knew the script by heart but had finally refused to step onto the stage. There was no anger left, just a vast, echoing emptiness where filial obligation used to reside. Later that afternoon, an unexpected call came through from my Aunt Carol, my mother's sister, usually the most reasonable member of the extended family. I hesitated, then answered. Ethan? Her voice sounded strained. Honey, I'm at your parents' place for your mom's birthday. Things are a bit chaotic here. No power, no water since this morning. She paused. Your mom wasn't feeling well yesterday, actually. Had a bit of a scare, went to the ER for observation, chest pains. She's fine now, back home, but didn't they tell you? The question hung in the air, innocent, yet devastating. Chest pains, ER visit, and I, her son, the one reliably paying the bills that kept her lights on and water running, hadn't even received a call. Not a text, nothing. I was truly invisible, irrelevant, until a service was disrupted, until my function was required. No, Aunt Carol, I replied, my voice carefully neutral. No one told me. Oh, she sounded flustered. Well, maybe they forgot with all the birthday prep. Anyway, do you know what's wrong with the utilities? Your dad's trying the companies but can't get through without account holder verification. I canceled the automatic payments a few weeks ago, Aunt Carol. I stated simply, factually. They'll need to set up payment under their own names. There was a stunned silence on the other end. You canceled them. But why? Personal reasons, I said quietly. I have to go, Aunt Carol. Work call. I ended the call before she could respond, switching my phone to silent. The final piece hadn't just clicked. It had slammed into place. My exclusion was total, encompassing even potential crises, unless my wallet was needed. The emptiness solidified into something hard and unyielding. Life, however, has a penchant for dark irony. A few days later, back in the controlled environment of my office, I was reviewing quarterly HR reports with my chief operating officer. Innovate Solutions was expanding its Boston headquarters, absorbing some key personnel from our recently acquired Chicago branch. I scanned the list of incoming transfers, approving standard relocation packages. Then a name jumped out. Ava Sharma, Senior Marketing Strategist. Strong performance reviews, recommended highly by the Chicago lead. Talented, ambitious. I vaguely recalled meeting her briefly at an industry conference months ago. I scrolled down the personnel file to the emergency contact information. Name, Luke Miller. Relationship, partner. My brother's girlfriend, transferring to my company. To a role where her direct supervisor, the director of marketing, reported directly to me, the CEO. A wry, humorless smile twisted my lips. The universe wasn't just ironic, it was mischievous. My family, who likely still pictured me hunched over a keyboard in some anonymous tech support role, had no idea their golden boy's partner was about to enter my orbit under my ultimate authority. I approved the transfer without comment. Let the pieces fall where they may. Ava's first official day was 2 weeks later. She was scheduled for an orientation meeting with the senior leadership team in the main boardroom. I watched from my position at the head of the long, polished table as she entered, radiating confidence in a sharp business suit, portfolio tucked under her arm. She shook hands with the COO, the CTO, the head of sales, her smile bright and professional. Then her eyes moved down the table and landed on me. Her confident smile froze. Her eyes widened almost imperceptibly at first, then fully, recognition dawning mixed with utter disbelief. The color drained from her face. Ethan? The name was a barely audible whisper, lost in the room's quiet hum, but I saw her lips form it. I stood up, extending a hand, keeping my own expression perfectly neutral, professional. Welcome to Innovate Solutions, Ava, I said, my voice calm and even, loud enough for the others to hear clearly. I'm Ethan Miller, the CEO. We read your file. Impressive background. We're looking forward to having your expertise on the team. I gestured towards an empty chair. Please have a seat. We were just about to discuss the Q3 strategic roadmap. The other executives exchanged slightly curious glances at her reaction, but quickly refocused as I began the meeting. Ava sank into the chair, visibly shaken, her professional composure momentarily fractured. Throughout the hour-long meeting, I addressed her only when necessary, keeping the tone strictly professional, discussing marketing integration and cross-departmental goals. I could feel her eyes on me occasionally, filled with confusion, perhaps dawning apprehension. I established the boundary immediately, cleanly. Here, I was not Luke's overlooked older brother. I was the CEO. Her boss's boss. The reality she hadn't known existed. The inevitable collision came sooner than I expected. The following weekend, Luke apparently decided it was time for damage control after the birthday fiasco. He organized a family video call, ostensibly to clear the air and perhaps subtly pressure me back into the fold. Ava was beside him on screen, looking uncomfortable. My parents were there, their expressions strained. Aunt Carol had joined too, her face etched with worry. I joined briefly, citing limited time between meetings, mostly out of a detached sense of morbid curiosity. The conversation was stilted, awkward. My father mumbled something about utility bills being sorted out. My mother asked vaguely if I was doing okay. Luke tried to steer the conversation towards neutral territory. Then Aunt Carol, perhaps trying to bridge the gap, turned to Ava. "So, Ava, honey, how's the new job in Boston settling in? Big move for you." Ava forced a smile, clearly still processing her new reality. "Oh, it's great, Aunt Carol. Really dynamic company, very forward-thinking. Innovate solutions." She hesitated, glancing nervously at Luke, then plunged ahead, perhaps feeling transparency was the only option. "Turns out, well, it's quite a coincidence, actually. Ethan is the CEO there, my direct boss's boss, technically." A heavy, stunned silence descended upon the video call. You could have heard a pin drop. Luke looked like he wanted the ground to swallow him whole, his face flushing crimson. My mother's hand flew to her chest, her eyes wide with disbelief. My father stared blankly at the screen, his jaw tight, the implications clearly hitting him with the force of a physical blow. CEO, Innovate Solutions. The successful, rebranded company built by the son they'd dismissed and tried to hold back? I watched their frozen expressions, the masks of parental concern and fraternal nonchalance shattering in real time. There was no triumph in it, just a cold affirmation of the truth I already knew. I let the silence stretch for a beat, then cleared my throat politely. "Well, it's been good catching up," I said, my voice calm, betraying nothing. "Unfortunately, I have another work commitment I need to prepare for." "Ava, good to see you settling in. Everyone else, take care." And with a click, I disconnected, leaving them alone in their collective, stunned silence. The real demonstration of power, however, came a week later. It wasn't planned, but the opportunity presented itself with perfect, almost poetic timing. A man named David Chen, a distant cousin connected through my father's side of the family, had requested a meeting. His family ran a small, struggling manufacturing business in our hometown, a business my parents had often subtly, and sometimes not so subtly, suggested I should help out or invest in, appealing to family loyalty. Now, David was in the Innovate Solutions boardroom, pitching for a significant strategic investment. His presentation was earnest but deeply flawed. The business model was outdated, the financials were weak, and his projections were based more on hope than data. The underlying, unspoken assumption was clear. Family connection should bridge the gap, where business sense fell short. He finished, looking directly at me, his expression hopeful, expectant. My COO and CFO exchanged discreet, unimpressed glances. I leaned back in my chair, letting the silence hang for a moment. "Thank you for your time and presentation, David," I began, my voice measured, professional. "At Innovate Solutions, as you know, we invest in disruptive technologies and scalable business models with clear paths to profitability and strong leadership." I paused, looking around the table at my team, then back at David. "Our due diligence process is rigorous. We prioritize innovation, market fit, and demonstrable ethical practices in management and operations." I let my gaze rest on him, keeping it steady, neutral. "Based on our criteria, while we appreciate you bringing this opportunity to us, this particular venture doesn't align with our current investment strategy." I saw his face fall. I continued, my voice dropping slightly, imbued with a quiet intensity. "Furthermore, we make it a point to only partner with organizations that clearly value all their key contributors and stakeholders. Transparency is paramount." We look for a history that ensures no one vital to a plan's success was ever sidelined, overlooked, or erased simply because their potential was deemed inconvenient or threatening to the existing structure. The subtext landed with surgical precision. David Chen, who knew the family dynamics, who had likely heard the dismissive comments about my computer hobby over the years, went pale. He understood instantly that this wasn't just a business rejection, it was a statement. He mumbled a thank you and quickly gathered his materials, leaving the boardroom visibly shaken. My executive team remained silent, understanding the message had been delivered, professionally, but unmistakably. Using the very success they tried to prevent, I had drawn a line, not with anger, but with the cold, hard currency of consequence. Life settled into a new rhythm after that. The family front was quiet, the silence profound. Then, one evening, an email arrived from Ava Sharma. It was brief and professional. Subject: personal update. Ethan, I'm writing to inform you that I have ended my relationship with Luke Miller. Recent events highlighted some fundamental differences in our values and perspectives that I can no longer overlook. This decision is personal and unrelated to my position here. I want to reiterate my commitment to innovate solutions and express my gratitude for the opportunity and your professional leadership. I look forward to continuing my work here. Regards, Ava Sharma. I read the email, appreciating her directness and professionalism. She hadn't blamed anyone, merely stated her decision based on her own realization. I typed a short, equally professional reply. Ava, thank you for the update. Your contributions here are valued. We support your decisions and look forward to your continued work on the team. Best, Ethan. I archived the exchange. Her life, her choices. My involvement ended there. Months drifted by. The silence from my family remained unbroken. It was a strange feeling, the absence of expectation, the lack of guilt-inducing calls or texts. It was like a constant background hum had finally been switched off. Then, one Saturday afternoon, my doorbell rang unexpectedly. I wasn't expecting anyone. Through the peephole, I saw them. My parents. Standing on my doorstep, looking uncertain, older. My mother held a reusable grocery bag, her face etched with worry lines that hadn't been there before. My father stood beside her, arms crossed defensively, his usual stern expression softened slightly by weariness. I hesitated for only a moment before opening the door. Ethan, my mother began, her voice softer than usual. Can we come in for a minute? Talk? I stepped aside wordlessly, letting them into the apartment they had never bothered to visit before, even when I lived only an hour away. The silence was thick, awkward, stretching between us as I offered them water, which they accepted mutely. We sat in the small living area, the minimalist space suddenly feeling crowded. My father cleared his throat, avoiding my eyes. Ethan, look, about that MIT business. He struggled for words. Maybe we didn't handle that right. We were worried. You were always so intense, so driven. We thought you'd go so far away, forget about family. Luke needed. You thought wrong, I interrupted quietly, but with a firmness that surprised even myself. You didn't protect me, you limited me, based on your fears, not my potential. My mother quickly jumped in, placing the grocery bag on the low coffee table. Honey, we know things have been strained. We miss you. Your father worries, even if he doesn't show it. And Luke, well, Luke is really struggling since Ava left. His latest business idea fell through. She wrung her hands. We were hoping, now that your company is doing so well, maybe you could help out. Just a little bit each month to help us cover things, make sure Luke gets back on his feet. My father added gruffly, "We figured $1,500 a month should cover the essentials." It's the least you could do. Family helping family. There it was. The real reason for the visit. Not apology, not reconciliation, but need. The old pattern reasserting itself. I looked at them, truly looked at them, perhaps for the first time without the filter of desperate hope for their approval. I saw two people trapped by their own choices, still trying to leverage guilt and obligation. I took a deep breath, the icy calm returning. "I understand finances can be difficult," I began, my voice even, measured. Businesslike. "I am willing to discuss providing some financial support, but only under very specific, legally binding terms." Their eyes widened slightly. Legal terms? "First," I continued, "any support provided would be documented in a formal agreement, outlining the amount, duration, and purpose. Second, the responsibility must be shared equally. Luke is an adult. He needs to contribute 50% of any agreed-upon amount. If he cannot, the total amount is reduced accordingly. Third, I require full transparency regarding your current financial situation, assets, income, expenses. And finally," I paused, letting the weight of the next condition sink in. "The agreement will include a clause stipulating that upon your passing, any distribution of your estate, including the family home, will proportionally reflect the documented financial contributions made by both Luke and myself from this point forward." My father's face flushed a dark red. He slammed his hand down on the coffee table, making the water glasses jump. "Conditions? You're giving your own parents conditions? After everything we did for you? We raised you." I met his anger calmly, unflinchingly. "And what you did," I repeated, my voice quiet but unyielding, "was hide my future in a shoebox. You sacrificed my opportunities for your comfort and Luke's perceived needs. That cancels any perceived debt. These aren't conditions born of spite. They are boundaries born of experience. I will not be an invisible, unconditional resource anymore. I don't owe you my silence or my money without respect and accountability." My father opened his mouth, then closed it again, sputtering, silenced by the direct confrontation with the truth he couldn't deny. My mother looked back and forth between us, tears welling in her eyes, before tugging weakly at my father's arm. "Robert, let's just go," she whispered. He stood abruptly, knocking his chair slightly. He glared at me one last time, a look of baffled fury, before turning and stalking towards the door. My mother gave me a final, pleading look, then followed him out. The door clicked shut behind them, leaving me alone in the sudden, profound quiet of my apartment. Another chapter closed. This time, I had written the ending myself. They never reached out again after that day. No angry calls, no pleading texts, no attempts at manipulating guilt. Just silence. A silence that felt less like abandonment and more like acceptance. Acceptance that the old rules no longer applied, that the control they once wielded was gone. Life found its new equilibrium. Innovate Solutions continued to grow. I worked hard, led my team, navigated the challenges of the tech world. There were moments, late at night, staring at lines of code when the ghosts of the past would whisper, the what-ifs, the lost years. But they were fainter now, drowned out by the quiet hum of a life built on my own terms, fueled by the potential they tried to extinguish. One rainy afternoon, months later, I found myself in a quiet cafe downtown, watching the raindrops chase each other down the large window pane. My phone lay silent on the table beside my coffee cup. My mind felt clear, calm. The burning anger, the sharp sting of betrayal, they had faded, metabolized into something quieter, a deep understanding. I hadn't sought to destroy my family. I had simply refused to participate in their destructive patterns any longer. I had drawn boundaries to protect my own hard-won peace. The waitress refilled my cup. I smiled my thanks. Looking out at the rain-washed street, at people hurrying by under umbrellas, I realized the profound truth of my journey. Freedom wasn't about escaping the past. It was about refusing to let the past define the future. It wasn't about seeking external validation. It was about cultivating internal clarity. For the first time in decades, the future stretched before me, not as a path dictated by others' fears or expectations, but as an open landscape, limitless, entirely my own. I took another sip of coffee, the warmth spreading through me, a counterpoint to the cool rain outside. A genuine, peaceful smile touched my lips, free,